I'm the Launch Lab Manager, and today we have Charles from Legislate here today. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
This is really exciting. So we are launching our Launch Lab podcast. I'm really excited to have you here today. My first question is, can you tell me a bit about your company, your vision and mission?
Yeah, so I'm Charles, I'm the founder of Legislate. I started the company 3 years ago after experiencing a lot of pain with legal documents. I don't actually have a background in law. I was working in business development at a startup, and I just found it really frustrating tailoring templates and just how long it would take for a contract to be signed. And then post-signature, I always found it really frustrating being able to share the data in those contracts with finance or customer success or whoever needed access to the contract. And the tipping point is that we were losing momentum because of legal. And at Legislate, what we're doing is we're leveraging a branch of AI called knowledge graphs to make the data in the contract searchable so that contracts can be created more efficiently by people, operations and finance teams, but then so that they can also answer questions about those contracts post-signature. So yeah, company's 3 years old, team was 17, and over 200 clients.
Wow, that's amazing. I know nothing about law as well, so I'm quite curious, what did you actually study before? I know this is a new field for you, so I'm quite interested to know what your actual educational background is.
I studied engineering in France, and like most engineers, when you experience a problem, you want to engineer a solution, and that's pretty much the approach I took with contracts.
Yeah, so that's my next question was, you experienced this problem firsthand. Not a lot of people would go, okay, I've experienced this problem and I'm actually going to go solve it. So you mentioned a little bit about your educational background driving you, but can you explain a bit more, what made you make the leap or make the jump?
At the time I was working at a startup in Oxford, and I think that Oxford in itself is quite an innovative ecosystem with lots of deep tech companies that are being spun out of the university, and I was working at one of them. So at the time, there was also a lot of hype around AI. I know there's a lot of hype today, but there was a lot of hype then, and it just made me want to start my own company. And so when I found this problem, I experienced it firsthand because we were, I said losing momentum, but we were sometimes losing opportunities because of how long it would take legal documents to just reach the point where they can be signed. And I guess I was just part of an ecosystem where it was sort of encouraged to start companies, and so I found the problem, it affected me quite severely, and I guess I had some great mentors and who became my angels to sort of help launch myself, and yeah, haven't looked back since. Wow,
you come across quite confident. I mean, have you always been this confident? Because speaking to you, it just seemed like, yeah, I just found the problem and found good people to help me. But honestly, has it been quite difficult for you in the past 3 years?
I mean, I don't know if I'm confident. I think I'm quite pragmatic, and so if I can find a logical way of solving a problem, then there's no reason why it should fail. But and that's, I guess, how I sort of rationalized starting a company and growing it to where we are today. But starting a company is not easy. I think building a product is not easy. Building a team is not easy, and raising investment is not easy, and then acquiring your first customers and scaling your client base is not easy. So yeah, it's definitely had its challenges, but I also think the success and the highs make everything worth it.
Yeah, amazing. So I'm just going to ask a few more questions about Legislate, right? So for the average person who knows nothing about law like me, what is this, a B2C company? Is this a B2B? How would I use, your product? Just give me an idea of what that would look like.
When we started the company, we were a bit of everything. We had B2C customers that were primarily landlords and letting agents, but then we also had some B2B customers, startups, early stage companies. I'd say over the past 6 months, we've definitely been focusing more on B2B, and it's not that we don't want to work with B2C customers at all. It's just that the B2B companies are bigger and have more contracts and therefore can unlock more value from our platform. In terms of what the platform does and who we work mainly with the people, operations and finance teams at companies that need to create contracts as part of their workflows. For example, an HR manager needs to send out employment contracts to new starters. An HR manager also needs to track notice periods, probation periods, and answer questions about contracts whenever there are legal updates. And so we're a platform that is aimed at those user groups that don't necessarily have a background in law, but create contracts as part of their day-to-day and need to access those contracts post-signature.
Yeah, so it just covers contracts, that's it?
Contracts and documents, and it's a platform to create contracts, sign them, and then manage them.
So you're effectively cutting out lawyers then who...
Not really, because lawyers wouldn't be involved in those workflows anyway. They might approve a template, for example, an employment contract, but then once the template's been approved, the HR manager, the lawyer doesn't get involved with the HR manager unless something really bad happens or there's a legal update. So I wouldn't say we're cutting them out or competing. The majority of our customers don't have legal teams. They might use external legal resources or they might have one legal counsel. Generally speaking, our customers don't have legal teams. And I think in the future, our platform definitely has the ambition to be used by legal teams. But I think if you look at the market, there aren't that many solutions out there for non-legal users, whereas there are already plenty of tools for legal teams.
Very interesting. So can you tell me a bit more about the AI element or the extra stuff that makes the platform more interesting than just like a contracts platform?
Yeah. So if you think about a contract, the first thing you think of is PDF or Word, which is a bunch of text, which is not necessarily easy for non-lawyers to read. It's not very easy to automate, it's not very easy to track, and if you want to find simple information like a start date, end date, you probably will still spend 15-20 minutes trying to locate that piece of information.
Control F.
Yeah, Control F, but even Control F doesn't work. For example, let's say you're looking for the job title, you can't Command F job title because the job title will already be expressed as maybe software engineer or so you can't just semantically search with Command F. It has to match or you don't find what you're looking for, right? Same with start date. If the contract doesn't say start date, maybe it says commencement date. You can't just Command F a date, right? So what we do at Legislate is we model the data and underlying concepts in the contract using knowledge graphs. And so knowledge graphs allow you to semantically model those relations so that when you search for start date, it knows what it's looking for because it's done that mapping. Knowledge graphs are a branch of AI that sort of does the opposite of what machine learning does. So machine learning induces patterns from data. Yeah. Knowledge graphs deduce patterns in data. And so knowledge graphs also are used in a wide range of applications. So Google uses knowledge graphs to make the web searchable. And also when you search for Apple, Google knows that you're probably searching for the company, not the fruit. So it's a bit of a long-winded response to say that we use knowledge graphs to model the underlying data in contracts to make the contract smart. And with that modeling, we can configure contracts and we can also make the contracts hyper-searchable.
So interesting. Where did you come across the concept of knowledge graphs? Because it's the first time I'm hearing it, and I'm sure the audience is also questioning what is it and how did you come across it? How did you know that was, I guess, the USP of your product or company?
I was in Oxford. I was working at a machine learning startup, and one of the key issues with machine learning is data and being able to integrate data from many sources. And at the time we were working quite closely with another spin out that was developing knowledge graphs to integrate data, connect data. And if you think about a contract, the relations in that contract are also quite tangled and not necessarily super obvious or there might be multiple references. A definition might be defined at the top with all the definitions, but it might also be defined within a clause. And so knowledge graphs just seem like a great way to map all those relations, but also add some structure to them. So because with knowledge graphs you can deduce patterns, you can effectively add logic to how those relations can or can't be combined, which is what a contract does. So I was experiencing the problem, exposed to knowledge graphs, and felt like actually this is a big opportunity precisely because knowledge graphs, they're super valuable, super important, but haven't had the same attention as the rest of AI. So that's why I'm very excited, because it will come.
It's so interesting. So I'm quite curious to know, are there any competitors in this space, or is Legislate the only company doing this?
It'd be quite worrying if we were the only company, but in terms of the market, a lot of legal tech solutions are built by lawyers for lawyers, which is great if you're a lawyer or a legal team, but if you're a people operations or finance person, you can't really use those tools because they're too technically complicated or too legally complicated. So from that perspective, there aren't that many legal techs aimed at business users. And then in terms of the legal techs that are aimed at business users, they're very much focused on just churning out PDFs as quickly as possible, which is great if you're happy to just sign a PDF and then forget about it and not know where it is in 2-3 years' time. But really what we're trying to do is allow companies to create documents in a smart way, but also then track that data per signature. Because there's 10% of, I think 70% of companies can't locate 10% of their contracts. And when you think about it, most contracts that you've signed do stay in your inbox. Some might be transferred to a drive, some might be transferred to your CRM, but not always. And then sometimes contracts aren't, signed electronically; they're signed physically. So I think it is just a real mess. And you can, continue to sign PDFs, or you can use a platform like Legislate and really track the data.
Amazing, yeah. So where is Legislate right now in its 3-year journey? So where are you at? What stage are you at right now? Are you fundraising? Would like to know.
Yep. So we just recently closed a £3 million round.
Oh wow, congratulations.
Thank you. We've got a team of 18 or 19 now. And we have over 200 clients. But I'd say over the past 6 months and with this funding round, we've also been transitioning from a inbound self-serve model to a outbound model, which is quite interesting, but ultimately means that we're almost, I wouldn't say we're starting from scratch, but it's a new strategy which we're sort of refining and learning and starting to see some wins, so it's quite exciting.
Yeah, so is the platform up and ready? Clients are using it?
Yeah, the platform is up and ready and we've got clients, but I guess when we started, we sort of let anyone and everyone use the platform because we were looking for feedback and looking to sort of improve the product. Now we're being a lot more selective about who we work with, so we still have all these legacy users and customers, but we're now sort of being a bit more targeted with who we want to work with, and I guess I wouldn't say it's a pivot, but it's definitely evolution the company's reached a stage now where we can do this.
Yeah, and what milestones are you aiming towards now? So you've got this huge round of funding. Do you have plans, or how does it actually work when you've raised so much money? Do you actually have a set plan, or are you kind of just still kind of figuring it out?
Yeah, well, we've done a whole bunch of hiring and onboarding. Before the funding round, we were about 10, so we've almost doubled in size. In terms of what's next, it is testing out this new outbound strategy. So we've hired a sales team. We didn't have a sales team before, so it's completely new. And the milestones are obviously, well, will this new sales team help us get to where we want to be? And same with marketing. We're sort of, when you have a team of 10 or less, where the majority of the team are software developers, it means that on the sales and marketing front, everyone's sort of wearing multiple hats. So this funding allowed us to sort of build teams, like a marketing team, a sales team, and obviously beef up the engineering team, but I guess it's just growth and acquiring more customers, bigger customers, getting more case studies, and just scaling.
Yeah. And what about, I guess, your role in this? Because your role has changed throughout the 3 years, and now you're managing this huge team. How has that been like for you? Has there been any challenges, or have you had to grow as a person? I'd love to know how that transition.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I had to do everyone's job before I hired them, whether it was on the product development, coding, sales, marketing, legal. But as we've sort of been growing and making sort of key hires that have allowed me to no longer do those jobs, and then also allow us to sort of unlock a lot more from legal, product, marketing, etc. I guess I'm always trying to figure out what should I be doing, because should I really be doing this, or should someone else do this, or should I should I be thinking about the future, or should I be thinking about today? And it's a constant back and forth, because ultimately the startup is growing, but I need to make sure that we're growing in the right direction. Luckily, I do have some employees that have been with us now for over 2.5 years, so they understand how I think and where we're going, and they sort of I can count on them. But yeah, I guess every day is different. The problems are different. But yeah, I'm constantly trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do and how I can be a better founder.
Interesting. So do you have a co-founder, or is this you're pretty much wearing the strategic hat?
I'm a solo founder, but I've got our COO who I can count on for strategic input, and our CTO as well. So there is a leadership team, and obviously count on them to help support and challenge me. So I'm not a dictator. No, I can be challenged, and I do listen.
Yeah, and where did you find these, I guess, the CEO and the CTO? Because I guess the early formation of the team is really important and will be important. So where do you find these people, and how was that journey?
LinkedIn. And it was, when the company was started 3 years ago, it was lockdown. And so both of them I hired within a week of each other, and it was Fernando reached out to a job application, and it wasn't the CTO role, it was just a full stack development role, and Amber reached out to a legal role that we had, and they both sort of were our first employees and have helped really grow the company to where we are today. So that's why they were sort of promoted. Amazing.
Great, so I'm gonna just switch gears a little bit if you want to sip your coffee. So I guess now I'm just going to think a bit about your early days as an entrepreneur, because I'm sure people listening are probably at the really early stages. So overcoming challenges, what's the most difficult aspect of being an entrepreneur?
I think the lows are really low, and I know that if you're an employee or if you're not an entrepreneur, you probably do experience lows, but I guess when you're a founder, everything is personal. It's your company, it's your business, and I know that clients sharing negative feedback is always, it shows that they actually care, and therefore it's good, but that's sometimes quite difficult to take, especially when you know how much energy you've put into the product. Obviously you need to have the right mindset and take the feedback on board and grow, but it's never easy hearing negative feedback. And then it's being an entrepreneur, you have to sort of deal and live with rejection, whether it's from prospective clients, whether it's from investors, and even from employees. It's really hard to retain talent or attract talent, and so I guess being an entrepreneur is like being a punching bag, and you just need to keep pushing. And it is. I know I've made it sound quite grim, but
it's a great metaphor.
But I think it's worth it. But the lows are really low.
How do you pick yourself back up? Because I think you're right about being an entrepreneur and being a punching bag and constantly facing rejection. How do you pick yourself back up? Does it affect your self-esteem? You know,
I think it's really important to have mentors or people you can count on to sort of pick you back up. But I think what I've always found quite reassuring is being part of founder networks or peer groups, because when it happens to you for the first time, you might think this is the end of the world. Why is it happening to me? But the reality is that even the successful founders have had experienced the same problems that you have. So I think being able to sort of talk to other founders is great. But yeah, I guess it's just not taking things too personally and being able to sort of identify lessons and then move quickly from the issues.
Can you share some founder networks that you're part of or that you were part of?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's the networks that I'm part of are relatively informal, so it might just be a WhatsApp group. But I think as a founder, yes, you can find WhatsApp groups or founder groups, but I think you can have a lot more, you can be a bit more selective. Well, I wouldn't say selective. You can also create the groups yourself. So, for example, I'm sure there's a Bayes Business School founder network. And I guess it's just putting yourself out there, reaching out to like-minded founders. So if you're an e-commerce founder, reaching out to other e-commerce founders, and then it's just by making those maybe 1-2 connections, you start to build a peer network, but they will also be able to recommend you to relevant networking or founder networks.
Great, very important top tip, which is, I think I agree, as an entrepreneur, sometimes you're just in your own world, but it's really important to constantly be making those networks and social networks, because that's how you get through the lows, right? Like you said, to know that you're not alone and that everyone's experienced pretty much the same thing. So that's great. Developing your minimum viable product. So how did you go about doing that at the early stages, especially such a tech-heavy platform like yours?
Yeah, I think the MVP is something which I don't think we nailed. We definitely did a lot of drawing, planning, designing, user experience research, but even after version 1, we then sort of scrapped it. I mean, after we put version 1 in the hands of users, we sort of got feedback, scrapped it, built version 2 with all these learnings. And even now we're sort of, I wouldn't say we're completely scrapping everything we built, but it's constantly a question of iterating on what you built. So I think with MVPs, you need to build something quickly, but not invest too much in the foundations, because you probably will end up not using it. And I'd say especially today, there's so much that you can do with no code or plugging different tools together, like a spreadsheet with front end. It can all be done now with automation and no code tools. So I think if you're not a technical fan, although I studied engineering, I'm not technical, so I was able to sort of mock something together, but I did need engineering help to sort of build the MVP. But I'd say if you're not a technical founder, try to build something yourself with the no code that's out there, because that's a very easy way to sort of get something up. A lot easier than if you had a developer working with you. And just don't invest too much in the foundations, because you probably are going to scrap it. And you won't know until you've got user feedback.
Yeah. And so you said you had a developer at the early stages. Did you bootstrap this, or did you have to raise it?
It was with initial angel funding.
Okay, got you. Yeah, and I assume that would be the case if you are building something AI related, right?
Yeah.
You can't really bootstrap
I mean, yeah, I guess it depends. I mean, now with AI, you could build an MVP with APIs, OpenAI, for example. This weekend I was playing with N8N, I don't know if you've heard of it, or even Zapier.
Yep.
So N8N is like Zapier, and it's really easy to leverage OpenAI in any workflow and build an MVP, because I do think there's lots of opportunity with vertical AI solutions, and it's very easy to sort of prototype those sorts of MVPs. But I guess when I started the company, we didn't have that, and also knowledge graphs have not been productized to the same level as generative AI or machine learning to be able to do that. So I guess that's why we needed some angel funding and yeah.
No, that's really interesting, because I know a lot of people are probably thinking about business ideas with AI and they don't really know how to go about building the MVP. So you gave quite a lot of good tips, so that's really good. How long did it take you to get from MVP to actual product?
3 months.
Wow, that's really fast.
Actually, no, sorry. From angel funding to MVP in the hands of users, 3 months. Yep. And then I guess we then spent another 3 months rebuilding the MVP into what it then became. But I guess recently we've also rebuilt the product, and that's been, I'd say, a good 6 month process. So it's quite frustrating as the company's matured and grown, and that although we've got more resources and a bigger team, it's almost taken longer. And it's not that our team is slower because it's bigger, it's because the product becomes more complicated. So when you rebuild something, there's a lot more to rebuild, and I guess also you sort of implement better practices as you get closer to knowing what the final version will look like. So
any advice during this process of building, reiteration, rebuilding? Any advice or anything that you've learned to make others' life a bit easier?
I feel like it's one of those things where you probably will learn by doing. I can say, don't waste any time on this or that, but the reality is you won't know if it's a waste of time until you've actually done it. I think it's just really, in tech, everything takes longer than planned. So if you've planned 1 month, it will take 2 months. And so I guess it's just understanding that, and then therefore, if you do need something to be out in a month, being ruthless with what you actually build. Because again, it's very tempting to say, oh, I'm going to add this or I'm going to add that, but if it's not essential, then don't do it.
Yeah, only add essential stuff.
Yeah. And I think it's something which, as you grow, you also don't know what's essential. Or it can be easy to say this is essential, but the reality is you just need to always take a step back and challenge yourself.
Yeah, and because you're a solo founder, who actually helped you take a step back? Was it just purely yourself, or?
Well, I mean, at the beginning, yes, and obviously our angel investors and mentors. But I guess right now, our COO does a great job at taking a step back and challenging us.
That's great. Okay, I'm going to shift gears to industry trends now. Can you tell us a bit more about the future of your industry, any insights and predictions? And this is, please use simple language, so I don't know anything about law or legal tech, and I'm sure people listening are probably in the same boat as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think legal tech is an industry which hasn't grown as quickly as, for example, fintech, because the majority of legal techs have been focused on lawyers. And lawyers are quite averse to technology, and lawyers are generally paid by the hour, so it's not necessarily in their interest to be more efficient, or there might be a bit of an identity crisis when they're looking at tech, because theoretically it could mean that they earn less if they use tech. So I guess there is a shift in the legal industry towards charging by the value as opposed to the hour, so value-based services, which therefore means that legal tech is more likely to be adopted. And so this doesn't necessarily apply to us because we don't sell to law firms or lawyers, but I do think that a lot of adoption of legal tech will be influenced by the adoption of legal tech by lawyers, regardless of whether the legal tech is ultimately used by lawyers or not. So I think ChatGPT, OpenAI, all of that has sort of created a lot of buzz around, I can use ChatGPT to summarize my contract or recommend some clauses, etc. So I think it is definitely getting lawyers thinking about using technology, but I think it will take time and it'll be slow. So that's why us as a company, we're very much focused on business users at companies that need to create contracts but don't have legal teams. And I think this is something that will, I hope they'll use our technology, and I'm sure they will, but it like with anything, it always takes longer than you expect.
So would you say your future legal tech competitors will be lawyers, or will they still be?
I don't think so, no.
Interesting. Because they're not incentivized.
They're not incentivized, and the types of contracts and documents we work with are quite standardized and high volume. And I think the value of a lawyer is helping you with legal advice. Got it.
Interesting. Very interesting. What would you like to do differently out of the 3 years that your journey that you've been as a founder? Is there anything that you would have wanted to do differently in that journey?
I think we focused on the wrong customer group for too long, and whilst we sort of learnt a lot, I think we could have been a bit more ruthless with, actually, these customers are great, but they're not going to help get the company to where it needs to be in 5-10 years. So therefore we should start exploring other avenues. And I think, I don't know necessarily why we focused as long as we did on, for example, property. But yeah, I guess it's just really looking at the data and not expecting it to change if you don't think it's going to change.
Interesting. So what fuels your passion outside of tech? Do you do anything else outside of building your business?
Not really, but I guess I like, since moving to London from Oxford, we moved the whole UK team to London. I've discovered all sorts of types of gyms, etc. So I'm quite into Barry's boot camp.
Okay, yeah. Good, okay. Any advice to your younger self?
Maybe wait, be more patient, and start a company a bit later. I started the company when I was 25, and whilst at the time it almost felt as if I was starting the company late, because I was, influenced by hearing stories about Mark Zuckerberg and, Bill Gates all being successful entrepreneurs by the time they were like 21 or whatever. I really felt like I was late to the game. But the reality is, and whilst I can't go back and change anything, and I do feel like we're in a good spot. The reality is a lot of your success as an entrepreneur comes from your initial network, whether it's investors, whether it's clients, and it's not that people or that you'll be able to sort of sell to your network, but ultimately you'll have some credibility that will be recognized, and the more experience you have, the bigger your network, but also the more likely that your track record and credibility will be valued outside of your network. So when I started the company, I only had 3 years of professional experience at an unknown startup in Oxford, which was maybe known in Oxford, and I think I'd sort of built a good network in Oxford, but the world is much bigger than Oxford. So yeah, in hindsight, maybe would have started the company later, and yeah.
That's really interesting. Did you always know you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
I didn't, but then when I started working at the startup, I knew that this is what I wanted to do.
Amazing. And any advice for a budding entrepreneur listening to the Launch Lab podcast, either at the very stages, let's say they're at the very stages of having an idea and wanting to be in your position in a couple of years' time? I
think build a safety net, because and this can be savings, it can be a passive stream of income, it can be a job. If you've got a safety net which allows you to sort of explore your idea, then it's ultimately not because the financial element is always a key stress point for being able to build anything or launch a company. So if you can sort of have a safety net which allows you to just focus on the problem you're solving, then it sort of frees up so much energy and time for you to do that, and then it increases the chances of it working. So
So
the safety net.
what was your safety net? Was it your job?
So when I was leaving the startup, I left on good terms, but I was able to out of hours explore the idea and sort of secure funding. And then the initial round of angel funding was, I guess, a form of safety net. But in hindsight, that's another benefit of starting a company later, is you do generally then develop streams of income that can support you when you do leave a job and just focus on the company.
And one last question from me. What makes you a great founder? What is the essence of being a good founder?
I don't know what it means to be a good founder. Is it returning money to investors? Is it having a great team? I don't know. I think ultimately, it's important to look at yourself and see where you can be better and recognize that you're not good here or you could do better. It's easy to sort of fall in love with the idea of being a founder and therefore think you're the best. And I think it's really important to realize that you're not, and not let the role of being a founder get to your ego, and then just really have someone who can objectively assess and keep you in check.
Oh, that's really good advice. You sound like a very self-aware, humble founder. Yeah, sounds great. Well, thank you so much for your time. I've learned so much about legal tech, even though I'm not a lawyer and I know nothing about law, but that was very interesting. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Please remember to subscribe to the Launch Lab podcast for more episodes.